Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I hope you're all doing great. I'd like to either welcome you or welcome you back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to configure Cisco Integrated Management Controller, or CIMC for short, on a UCS chassis. Now I know some of my network friends tend to be a bit unfamiliar with servers because a lot of times their organizations have a separate team to manage the compute environment, but it never hurts to understand stuff outside of your own discipline. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so what we see here is the document that basically the spec sheet of the C220M5, which is actually the device I'm going to be using for this demonstration. So this is the rear of the chassis, and I want to highlight a couple things here. So there's two ways to go about this. So the SIMC is basically a way to get you the keyboard, video, and mouse access without having to have a physical monitor, keyboard, and mouse connected. Okay, so it's basically through the network, and you'll be able to control the server upon reboots, and essentially it's just like being right in front of it. Now, again, there's a couple ways to approach this. So Cisco usually ships a KVM dongle that you can plug into the front of the chassis, which will essentially give you easier access, arguably, depending on your data center setup. So you can just plug that dongle into the front of the chassis and then connect your crash cart with your monitor, keyboard, and mouse right from the front. Now, if for whatever reason you don't have that dongle, you can also make those same connections on the rear of the chassis. So I wanted to highlight that here. So if you look at port 4, or I should say key 4 here in the depiction, that is actually a VGA video port. So it's an old school, monitor connection. And then you can see number 2 is a couple USB ports. So bear with me because this thing is heavy, but you can see I have a chassis here, and this is basically the rear of it, and you can see that I have a VGA cable plugged into it. So again, you'll plug your you'll plug your keyboard and mouse in, and you would essentially power up the server, and then you can start to administer the server from there. So that's what we're actually going to go ahead and do. So let me go ahead and bring up the monitor interface here. Okay, so the server is actually running in the other room because it's really loud. So I'm actually using the SIMC interface to demonstrate this. But again, this is the same exact thing you would see if you had a keyboard and mouse, a monitor, keyboard, and mouse connected to the server itself. So upon boot up, you're going to see the server will essentially start to post BIOS, and we should see a couple options here in a second. So we want to essentially look for the CIMC setup. So in this case, it says press F8. So I'm going to go ahead and press F8. And you can see it prompts us with a message that says entering the CIMC configuration utility. So we'll wait for this to bring up the menu here. And then what we should be essentially allowed to do is now configure whether we want DHCP, static IP address, all that. So in here, here's the little menu now. And all you need to really do is run through and basically either leave it as DHCP or change it to a static IP address. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and statically IP address. I'm going to make it on my lab network here, and I'm going to use the well-known Cisco umbrella DNS as a DNS server. In my case, I don't need to worry about VLAN, so I leave that unchecked. I don't have the ability to do NIC redundancy for the CIMC, so I just leave that as none. And essentially, when you're done and happy with your setup, you would go ahead and press F10. Now, after you set up the static IP or DHCP, most likely your SIMC is going to reset. It'll probably have the server reboot. And then upon reboot, you should see that the SIMC interface has been restarted and configured correctly. And then from that point, you would just simply point your browser to the IP address that you made your SIMC. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And you should be prompted with a login screen. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with my username and password. And you can see at this point, it gives me all the specs on my server, and it gives me a nice chassis status with some indicator lights depicting whether or not I have issues with the hardware itself. Now, once you're in here, you can go ahead and you can launch the KVM. So if I launch the KVM, again, this is very similar to being right in front of the server. But this is where you would essentially, if you wanted to attach virtual media, so if you wanted to, make this a bare metal server and uh, configure it with some application or operating system, then you would basically attach that virtual media here, okay? Or, you can use a USB stick in the back of the server and you can boot from USB and install whatever operating system it is you want to install. So either way, again, this is a way to administer the server just as if you were sitting in front of it. It's great for maintenances, reboots, all that stuff because you never lose access through the network when doing this. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and we're going to configure a RAID setup. So to bring up the keyboard, just FYI, if you go to within the CIMC, if you go to View Keyboard, it'll actually bring up your virtual keyboard. So again, you can boot the server up. You don't need the monitor, the keyboard, or the mouse connected. You can just run it as you would in the data center. And at this point, you would just drive all of the control through the virtual keyboard. So what we need to do here is, let me go ahead and close it for the moment. And we're going to go to advanced. We're going to go down to the RAID controller and we're going to go in here and we're going to go ahead and get the RAID array configured. So in a second here, what you should see is when I go to create virtual drive, we're going to first define what RAID level we're going to use. In my case, I have 4 hard drives. So I'm going to go ahead and go for a RAID 5 setup. It's probably about the best I'm going to do with the 4 drives I've got. Now, here's where you select the drives. So I'm going to go ahead and say select drives. And you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4 drives are available. Now, you can toggle these on one at a time by enabling them like that. So if you did want to split these up and have multiple spans and multiple arrays, you can do that. I'm just going to go ahead and say check all. Now I'm going to apply those changes. It says the operation has been performed successfully. I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. I'm just going to call it RAID 5 VD for virtual drive. So at the end of so these are all 1.7 terabyte drives, all 4 of them. So after the RAID 5 setup, you'll end up with basically a virtual drive just shy of 5 terabytes, which is fine. For the stripe size, I'm just going to go ahead and maximize this. Or I should say the strip size there. And then for default initialization, easy for me to say, I'm going to say full. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Tells me it was successful. And I'm going to escape out of that menu. I'm going to escape one more time. And now if we scroll down here for background operations, we can see there's a virtual drive operation in progress. And if we essentially drill into that, we can kind of watch the status as it goes. Now, this is going to take quite some time, so obviously we're not going to sit through this portion of the video. But after, a couple hours, this should reach 100%. The RAID array will then be ready for use, and then you can go on to the next step, which in my case will be to install VMware so that I can virtualize my lab. So I hope this has been informative. I hope this has been worthwhile. Like I said, this was kind of directed at some of my network friends who were curious on server setup type stuff. So shout out to you guys. And like I said, I hope to see you on future videos. Take care.